welcome back to my channel. Or if you're new here, hi, I'm Mary. If you haven't already done so, please hit the subscribe button below and follow me on the Insta at Mary Montanaro. But tonight, I thought it would be really fun to, first of all, make dinner and show you guys what I make and intensely how I make it. That sounded intense, but like, I thought it'd be really cool to show you guys how I make it. So I'm going to make a like fall green bowl type deal with a bunch of different veggies and some wild rice, and I'm gonna bring you guys along and hopefully you can take some of these tips or all of these tips and make food for yourself that's fucking bomb. So yeah, you know what, let's just get right into it. Okay, first step is I have these, damn it. I have these tomatoes that I got at the farmer's market, and they're just like little cherry tomatoes. I have a bunch of them. So I thought they would be really good if I just roast them. I'm gonna roast them whole, and then they'll be really good. So I'm gonna show you how I'm gonna do it. All right, so we've got these tomatoes from the farmer's market, and then I put thyme, and there was rosemary from the farmer's market on them. And then, as you saw, I put some avocado oil and some salt and pepper. And okay, excuse this thing because I don't have a smaller oven dish. So I'm using a pan, and I looked it up. This one's safe to use, don't worry. But so I'm just gonna put this in the oven at 375, and I'm just gonna keep an eye on it. I will time it, and then I'll let you guys know how long to do it for. Okay, so I have some sweet potatoes here. I have a purple sweet potato, a white sweet potato, and then a regular, just like yellow sweet potato. And I'm going to cut them up and then put them in this pan. I find that a pan with thicker edges cooks sweet potatoes better. And then in this pan, I just have my reusable parchment, which is amazing, and I'll link it down below. You can get it on Amazon. But before I cut the sweet potatoes, I'm making wild rice tonight. So I'm gonna use this Lundberg wild rice blend. It's so good, I've made it before. So, and I have a measuring cup here. I'm gonna measure out a cup of this because I don't measure when I cook often, but I do measure rice and other grains because you need to know how much like water or whatever you're gonna use. In this case, I'm gonna use chicken bone broth to cook the rice, and I'm gonna use coconut milk, but I'll show you that when we get to that. So, the wild rice, how I like to do it is I like to soak my rice for about, usually up to 6 hours, honestly, but right now I'm just gonna do it for like 30 minutes before I cook it, just because it softens it a little bit, and I find it makes for creamier rice. So I'm just gonna pour this rice, carefully, I'm just gonna pour this rice into just a mason jar, and I'm gonna fill the mason jar with some water, and I'm just gonna put the rice aside. So as you can see, the rice is just in the water, and we will deal with that later. But now I am just going to cut the sweet potatoes. Another thing that I wanna point out is when I'm cooking, I'm paying a lot of attention to the knives I'm using. So I love a small but thick knife for cutting smaller veggies, you know, like onions, Brussels sprouts, I would just use a tiny knife. But onions, the tomatoes, if I were gonna cut those, like that would be fine. But for sweet potatoes, it's actually safer to use a bigger knife because they are harder to cut. Another thing I would suggest is having your knives sharpened, like finding somewhere in your town. I know that's like an intense tip, but it changes the game in the kitchen. So 10 out of 10 recommend that. But yeah, I'm just gonna cut these into some cubes and then we'll put some stuff on them. Okay, sweet potatoes are coated with stuff and they're ready to be put in the oven. So as you probably saw, I just did, this was coconut oil and then salt, pepper, and then this is paprika and garlic powder. So that's all I put on my sweet potatoes. As you can tell, I'm pretty generous with the seasonings. A lot of it I feel like comes off when it's in the oven. So in order to make sure they keep their flavor, that's what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna put these on the bottom shelf. I have the tomatoes on the top shelf. And the tomatoes are cooking. I can smell them, they smell delicious. And again, it's at 375. Okay, so I'm gonna make like a rendition of a cheesy Brussels sprout kind of. So I actually did buy these pre-cut. Don't hate me, but I hate cutting Brussels sprouts. I'm not patient enough for that. So I have them on a baking sheet with my reusable parchment, just laid out. And I have some of this ghee spray. Ghee, if you don't know, it's clarified butter. So they basically take all of the salt out of the butter and it's just like the fat basically, and it's so good for you and it's so good. So I'm gonna use ghee spray, but you don't have to use ghee spray. You could always just melt some ghee. It's so good. So I'm just going to spray the Brussels sprouts generously with ghee and then do some salt, Himalayan pink salt. However much you think, but again, be generous, but don't oversalt your food. I always, or not always, but I used to do that all the time, and then I got better with like managing it. Then some pepper. If you don't have, or if you have fresh ground, it's better, but I don't, so we're going with it. And then some nutritional yeast. It's literally the best thing ever. It's just literal nutritional yeast. You can find it anywhere. Trader Joe's has it. So yeah, I'm just putting on a generous amount of this again. And then I'm also gonna do a little bit of garlic powder to give like the really cheesy vibe. And again, I think a big thing with cooking things in the oven is just mixing them. While we let those broil, I have 2 onions here that I'm just gonna chop up and put in a bowl and set aside because I really like, my mom hates onions, but I love caramelized onions. So when I'm not at home, I like to make them, and Blake likes them too. So if we both eat them, then we both have bad breath, so it's fine. But, so I'm just gonna chop these up using this knife. Okay, they've been broiling for about like 2 minutes. Again, every oven's different, but I'm gonna take mine out. And they might not even have a crisp yet. They have a little bit of one, but I think they look really good. So I'm gonna take those out and put the Brussels sprouts in and then turn the oven back to 375. Okay, it's about 15 minutes later. I just drained the rice into this and I'm going to add in, I have this bone broth. It is the Epic. Another good one is the Bonafide Provisions. And if you're vegan, then obviously don't use bone broth, use veggie broth. And so I have 1 cup of rice and I'm just gonna do this whole thing, which is like 1 3/4 to 2 cups. And then I'm just gonna put it on this stove and bring it to a boil. And then I'll add the lid once it's at a boil and then turn it down to a simmer and let it cook for about 20 to 30 minutes. Our veggies are still doing well. They've just been in for about 25 to 30 minutes at this point. Or at least the sweet potatoes have been in for about 30 minutes. And so I'm just going to take a spatula and flip them around a little bit. But they still probably have a good 20 minutes or so, or a little more to go. And these guys are doing well. They've been in for about 20 minutes, I would say. And so I'm just gonna flip them around. Again, they can probably stay in for another 15-ish minutes. I want them to get crispy. They're getting crispy, but I want them more crispy. Okay, it's only like 5 minutes after I put them in, but I actually think they're done and I don't want to overcook them. So I'm gonna take these out and I'm gonna put some cauliflower in. Okay, I cut the cauliflower into steaks, which is, you guys saw me how I did it, but I just literally cut it down like that. And then I put ghee, salt, pepper, and thyme on this. I put some of my fresh thyme on it. And I'm not gonna mix this just because I want the thyme to get crispy and I want it to all be on top of the cauliflower. So I'm gonna put this in at 375 and look at these Brussels sprouts. They're looking good. It's like 20 minutes later. So the rice has been cooking for a total of like 40 minutes, but it's pretty much ready. So I just took it off of the heat and I'm just leaving the lid on so that, I mean, it's still gonna continue to cook because there's still obviously heat below it, but I just don't want it to get overdone. So I would say about 40 minutes with the rice. Recipes will all be down below, just so you guys know. Okay, those onions that we cut up earlier are back. I just put a little bit of oil, I used coconut oil, but it really doesn't matter, into this pan and heated the pan up. And now I'm just gonna add in the mushrooms. I wanted to make sure they would crackle because I do want them to get caramelized. So the pan is on medium to high heat. And I want it to be because I want these to get nice and crispy. I'm also gonna put on a lid. Cauliflower's been in for like 21 minutes now. And
precisely 21 minutes.
Exactly. It's been in for like 20 minutes. And so I just turned to the oven to broil. So the cauliflower's on the top shelf, the sweet potatoes are on the bottom shelf. I think it'll just give a little bit of crispiness before the things can be done. But I took a sweet potato out to taste it and it looks really good. So we'll see. Yeah, it's got a little bit of crispiness on it. It's looking real good. And then we've heated up the pan and we're just gonna put the broccolini in. Okay. Just, yeah. Yeah, Blake.
Yep, this isn't working.
Fucking get it, baby. Yeah. This is Blake taking out all of his anger on me, just on the broccoli.
Yes. Agreed.
And then lid goes on. Broccolini is different from broccoli.
Isn't it baby broccoli?
It is, where we like to keep it nice and crispy. So it's just gonna get a nice little crisp on it, and it's gonna stay pretty raw.
Love to do.
What did Stephen Hawking love to do, Blake?
Go to the strip club.
Oh my god.
Alright.
Okay, anyways, we're making mushrooms. These are my take mushrooms. I know they look weird, but they're really good. And then we're also making for you less adventurous folks. No, they're not.
They're different?
Yeah.
Right.
For you less adventurous folks, we're also making baby Bella, so you can make them in the same way. So what we did was we got the pan real nice and hot, and we cooked stuff in it before. But then we're just gonna put the mushrooms in. We didn't put anything in first, and then we'll add some ghee, salt, and pepper, and put on a lid. First, I might put the lid on for a little bit, and then I'll add the ghee, salt, and pepper. True. Okay, so now the mushrooms are really going, and the reason I didn't put anything on them is because I wanted them to get crispy. But now I'm just gonna add some coconut aminos, which will give them just like a nice flavor. Just a little bit of that. I love this stuff. It gives it like almost a soy sauce flavor. I really love it on mushrooms. And then I'll add a little bit of salt, but that stuff is salty, so I don't add much. Oh, and pepper. That's not the last thing. The last thing is sauteed spinach that I just made. I sauteed spinach in coconut oil, salt, and pepper, and that's it. So yeah, this is the whole meal. Okay guys, now we have all of the ingredients, all of the components of a fall harvest bowl done. No. So we've got broccoli, cauliflower, the sweet potatoes, obviously, the mushrooms, the rice, the tomatoes that we made what feels like forever ago, the onions, and the Brussels. Now we can just put the components together and make one. Blake's giving me the puppy dog eyes and asking me to make him cookie dough. And he's like, let's just do it.
Yeah, cookie dough or nut butter.